Good morning, everyone. It's Dr. Hodges, and I was recently at a cheer competition, and one of the sweet mamas had a great question for me, and I was like, "Oh my God, I need to make a video on this." And her question was, I think I get in my 10,000 steps a day. Is that enough? Is that all I need to do? Because I'm not really seeing any movement on a scale. And I think that is a wonderful question. I get this a lot from patients because so often I have patients that they actually do a lot of work on a regular basis. I have folks that, they might be overweight, but maybe they work in a warehouse and they're wandering all over the place. And so I think that there's a couple of reasons why, if you are hitting your steps, why you might not be seeing any movement on a scale. And so there's a couple of ideas to discuss. Okay, so the first is the concept of NEAT, so non-exercise energy expenditure or thermogenesis. What we need to do for exercise to get into a good calorie deficit, and then how does our diet impact that? So let's kind of just dive into number one. Let's talk about NEAT. That is our non-exercise thermogenesis. So in this idea really hit home for me during COVID, not just for myself personally, but for my patients. And so what I found is that while patients were not eating tremendously more in their diet, they were gaining weight. And it was really because their overall energy expenditure had just completely plummeted. So for instance, for the first 6 weeks during COVID, I really wasn't allowed to go into the hospital. What I did not really constitute a true medical emergency. And so all I did was telemedicine. And, I'm literally going for a walk right now. Let me cross the street. What was interesting is that my step count for the day dropped to maybe 600. I mean, literally all I did is I would get up in the morning, go to the bathroom, make a cup of coffee, and then just sit and do all my telemedicine. Didn't go out, didn't go to the grocery store, didn't get in the car. I mean, I really just stayed put. And so my weight was more impacted by my complete lack of activity, really, than any food that I was eating. Like when I say that if you are only walking 600 steps in a day, which is minuscule, I mean, I'm surprised I didn't get a blood clot in my leg. I was literally not moving at all. And oh my gosh, it is busy out today. Hang on one second. And so, it wasn't the fact that I was eating more, it was the fact that I was burning so much less, just on a regular basis. I'm not even talking about exercise. I'm just saying my body physically did not need very much energy to fuel my little 4'11" frame because I wasn't moving. I was literally just sitting there. And so that's why it's so important that we focus not just on our diet and our exercise, but just also on just our day-to-day activity. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and oh my God, I am all over the place. This is annoying. I'm never going to come walking this late in the morning again. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and get on a boot camp class, but it does mean that you just need to walk, so it's really important. Oh my goodness, sorry, Pippi. I'm walking my dog too. It's really important that you're just moving, period. So I know a lot of times patients, whenever they're working from home, they have their watches, and it will buzz like every 60 to 90 minutes, and it says, you've been sitting too long, you need to get up and move around. Yeah, you need to listen to your watch. You got to get up and move around. A, so you don't get a blood clot or a venous stasis and get all swollen legs. But second of all, we got to work on that NEAT. We got to work on that non-exercise thermogenesis. So that's number one. Okay, you just have to be active. God made our bodies to move. You got to move. I think the second thing that is kind of profound is whenever she said, do I really need to do 1,000 steps? And for a lot of people, if you do 10,000 steps, that's going to be a couple of miles. Not me. I'm 4'11". My stride, I can guarantee you, if I counted my steps, if I'm going a mile, it will take way more steps for me to hit 1 mile than I think an average American. Whenever they developed the 10,000 step rule, it was an idea to let's get Americans moving. But number one, you got to have your NEAT going on. You just cannot be just sedentary. But then number two, when it comes to exercise, you walking a lot at work and you having a set time where you have sustained aerobic activity, those are two absolutely different things, because they've done studies to look at, do people have more benefit from doing a 50-minute sustained aerobic exercise activity or 5 10-minute exercise activities? And they found that the outcomes were the same. But the minimum amount of time for this sustained aerobic activity is 10 minutes. And so I can guarantee you, as you're walking about throughout your day, maybe you need to walk up the stairs, or whenever I was a resident and I was all over the hospital, I was not having, I can guarantee you, 10 minutes of sustained aerobic activity where my heart rate was above 110. Now, I can guarantee you it would get over 110, 115 when I was in the middle of a trauma, but I was just standing still. It wasn't that I was doing aerobic activity. Completely different things going on, okay? And so, when we're looking at exercise for weight loss, you have to have this sustained activity. That is where you're going to see the benefit. And then I think thirdly, let's talk about your diet. You need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. You may get a calorie deficit between your NEAT activities, so your non-exercise movement, and some sustained exercise for however long that may be. But if you're not focusing on your diet, good morning. If you're not focusing on your diet, you're not going to have a really good long-term outcome. And in fact, I think about whenever I used to work in corporate America, the ladies that would go for their, noon lunch walk. Yes, they would go and walk. So, and they would walk for a good 30 minutes and they would hoof it. They would go all around the parking garage. They had 30 minutes of sustained activity. But then they would come back and their lunch would be very calorie dense, or they would drink their calories throughout the day, or they would snack on things. And so they kind of just defeated the purpose. Their exercise was basically allowing them to maintain their weight because they were consistently eating in a calorie surplus. Does that make sense? And so let's put all this together. Number one, why are your 10,000 steps, is that really what you need to do? Well, I think the first thing you need to do is look at what is your baseline. If you have never exercised and you're obese, or if you have never exercised and you have a normal weight, then you have to start from somewhere. And especially if you're over the age of 50 or 60. I have plenty of patients that come to see me. They've been overweight all their life and they're in their 50s or 60s. Those folks are not, it is inconceivable to think that I could tell them, okay, now I need you to go walk 2 miles. They might have a difficult time just walking a block because they're carrying so much extra weight and they're already so very deconditioned. And so just saying, we need to do what we can to increase NEAT and exercise activity. So that would be, okay, when your little watch goes off, if you work from home, like every 60 to 90 minutes, you need to get up, and for at least 5 minutes, I want you to go make a couple of like loops around in your backyard. Okay. And then I kind of will tell patients, take a pedometer and just see on an average day, how many steps do you normally get in on any given day? And so like, let's say you normally get in 2,000 steps. Okay, well then make a goal that every day this week, you're gonna consistently get in 2,500 steps. Give yourself a realistic goal to shoot for. And then that's really just to increase your NEAT, okay? If you're somebody that is, let's say you're somebody whose BMI is less than 30, and you've been kind of using the 10,000 step rule as your exercise, the reality is that you're going to have to work harder, put in more effort for your aerobic activity, for your strength training, so you can get a really good benefit. And so for those folks, I would kind of use the 10,000 steps really as a measure of your NEAT, a little bit as like functional exercise, but you need to know that you're going to have a dedicated time to exercise if you really are trying to use exercise as a way to make your heart stronger and to use it as a fat burner. And then finally, you cannot discount your diet, because you need to have a good high protein diet. I would say at least 40% of your diet needs to be protein. And then check your metabolic rate. There's a little BMR calculator. It's on my website. And basically it will calculate the number of calories you need to maintain, and you just subtract 500, and that's where you need to be in a calorie deficit. So I suspect if all you've been doing is relying on 10,000 steps, the reason why you're not losing weight is because that is not it. You're not maximizing your return. You probably just don't have enough regular, just day-to-day, just like getting up and moving about. Number one. Number two, you don't have a designated exercise time. And number three, your diet is not where it needs to be. And I think lastly, whenever we talk about exercise, the recommendation for exercise is at least 350 minutes a week. What I found interesting is that whenever I took one of my courses with the Obesity Medicine Association, it even said up to 450 minutes a week. But again, if you're somebody that is deconditioned and you've never worked out, the idea of me saying, I need you to go exercise, whether that's a walk or going to Pilates, or whatever it is, whatever. I need you to do that at least 5 times a week. Like, that's just not going to happen. And why do I say it's not going to happen? I'm like, because it hadn't happened in the last 50 years. Why do we think it's going to happen now just because your doctor asks you to do it? You know what I mean? So give yourself small goals, but those are the 3 things. Non-exercise activity, regular exercise, and your diet. And if those things are not in sync, I will tell you, that's why those 10,000 steps, you're walking all over the place. That's why you're not seeing the results that you want. Hope that this helped.